think one of the impetus for me being here is when I met you, John. I just started the process of restarting my writing of this particular book that I started before COVID, and what I wanted to kind of uncover with that was the kind of fact that I've been quite successful actually of changing people's lives around the world through my work, through projects that I've been involved in, both businesses I've started and businesses and movements that I've been part of.
Very good.
And it's been really, really interesting because I went through like a branding process. A lot of people, go through a particular process at certain points in their life when they kind of look at their life and say, is this the right direction? Is this what I want to be doing? How can I do it better? And I went through a branding process where I really worked with a professional, which really helped me identify what I'm really, really good at and what I'm really not very good at. And one of the things that kind of came out, if you know me at all, if you look at my LinkedIn, you'll see I started my first business at 17. I've had 11 corporations, all over different parts of the world, over many years. And what a kind of business does is, in essence, it's kind of creating value for a particular audience, creating some kind of value. And usually the exchange is, you give me money and I give you some value in exchange, whether it be a product or a service or whatever it is. But in the last 10, 15 years, I've been working a lot more about expanding out the concept of value beyond just services and beyond just a product or something like that into something that's a bit more impactful, that makes a bit more meaningful kind of interaction. So I'm not a coach or any of those type of people. I'm not that way orientated. I'm still very business orientated, but I do believe in making a positive impact. So these are maybe products or services that do other things like help the world be a better place, or help you be better connected with friends or family, or maybe the way they operate is really, really good. Like it's got a lot of integrity. Like I'm invested into a company that does ticketing, and the system is democratic, and they can't let scalpers in, and so artists get fairly paid, and real fans get to buy tickets, not a machine or a bot or something just trying to make profiteering off it. So there's little things like this that we can do to actively make cool stuff happen. And over time, I worked out that I'd kind of, not accidentally, but I'd not deliberately set out in a conscious way to have my life orientated around making positive change happen, but it had happened anyway. And I'd seen from the businesses that I've done, literally millions of lives being affected in a positive way, with the things that I've done. But then people that I've supported and work with, people that I've kind of, from an advisory, investor kind of perspective, that affected the lives of billions of people over the 34 years that I've been doing this. And so I thought that was, I was a bit blown away. Kind of like, when you kind of do things and you kind of look back and think, oh, I've got this like massive career of stuff that I've done, and other people are going, oh yeah, that's completely obvious to me. But for you, because you've kind of slowly ground into it over a period of time, you kind of don't see the change and you don't see the impact you make. So it was quite shocking actually that I was able to do that. So I started writing this book pre-COVID, so 2019, early 2019, and it was about me deliberately understanding how to do that, how to make change happen. And so it's weird that we're talking about change, but what my thing that I want to change is enabling people to deliberately, make changes happen in a really positive and impactful way. And that's a little bit different than starting a business, or a little bit different than a coach or a process where you're doing personal transformation. It's a little bit different from that. It's taking a bit of knowledge from both worlds and kind of combining them. So I'm super practical. So everything I want to do is got to be, here's the ABCs of how to make this thing happen. Here's how to start a business. That was my first book. Here's how to get investment. I've done that, plenty of lectures, speaking around that. It's all really like, this is your problem, this is the solution, here's the few steps to get there. So the kind of what I'm on for at the moment is trying to translate some of what I've been able to do to enable other people to kind of just deliberately say, actually, I want to make a big impact on the environment. I want to make a big impact on my community. Give me the pieces, give me the tools to make that happen. because there's just, in the world we live in at the moment, one of the things I was literally talking last night with a guy who's like really intensely into deep tech and AI. And one of the things that we talked about is human beings and their role as we move forward with AI taking more and more jobs and taking more, I honestly believe AI is the next big kind of wave of technology. So, I've experienced computers rising. So the first computers were, room sized when I was a little kid. And then they became desktops when I was, just preteen. And obviously I grew up with computers all throughout my life. But I started one of my first big companies was a mobile phone company when they'd just gone from, like, I don't know if you ever remember, the phones used to have a handle on them, like a belt handle. It used to be the size of a brick or a bag. And they evolved to the first proper handheld, small, you could actually put in your pocket phone. Yeah. I think Nokia came out with one. Motorola brought out the Flip not very long after, and the technology got down to the stage where it can actually be personal. And then I started a company at that stage. So I saw that explosion and the subsequent impact on the way human beings operate. And I absolutely fundamentally believe that AI is the next big transformation, because I couldn't imagine then what phones are to my children and people around me. They are just a replacement for so much technology that we used before, and it's fundamentally changed the way we operate. And I think AI is going to do that as well. We can't even fathom where we're going to go from here. But the thing that's really important that you can trust that human beings are amazing at. We're amazing at pattern recognition, and we're amazing at creativity. Yeah. So the whole concept of strategy, interactions, and in fact, we talked about the fact that AI plus human teams beat AI, and so AI beats humans, like hands down. Like 10 years ago, AI beats humans in like chess, for example. But combinations of humans and AI together is far, far more powerful than AI by itself. So there's always going to be a place for that. So this kind of confluence of merging technologies and stuff happening in the future, people are starting to feel a bit lost and not sure where to go. And there's so many tools, I don't know. Do you know how many podcasts are there? I mean, how many podcasts are there? How much information can you consume? I mean, I went looking for a marketing product the other day, and there was like 80 different products. And, am I going to spend the time hours and hours trying to compare and work which one's the best fit for me? It's
great material here, Matt.
We're over-delivered.
It's great material here, Matt. So I just got a couple of ideas here in my head. And the first one is, you remind me of another person I know well for many years, John Stapleton. And John Stapleton, he graduated from university with a degree in food science. And then he set up the New Covent Garden soup company and subsequently sold that. He had a number of other ventures in the food area, but now what he's doing is he's now an angel investor, and he's also helping other people who want to set up food businesses to, put structure around those businesses. He becomes the chairperson of the board, for example. So he's now bringing his skill set, all his knowledge from the food sector, and helping other business entrepreneurs who are new to the area to grow sustainable businesses. The second person you remind me of there is Dr. Linda Shaw. And she had a very interesting article there on LinkedIn there during the week where she was talking about change. And what people have to be mindful of is how you react to change as a person, because if you're being pushed down the wrong path by an employer, you get negative emotions. You've got to be able to, watch for those triggers and hope and cope with change. And the third person I was just thinking of there was Henry Rose Lee. Henry had a very interesting article there on LinkedIn during the week. And she was talking about the impact of AI and will it help people to become more creative? And my argument was not necessarily so. AI might help people to take a Word document and transfer it into a PowerPoint document in a matter of seconds. But if you're a professional speaker, you still have to bring your own stories and craft those stories to deliver a powerful keynote. So AI will help to some extent, but it won't actually make you more creative. You still have to do the hard yards and practice your keynote. So, yeah, there's a lot of good information in what you're saying.
Exactly. So that creativity around keynotes is a great example because that's a human to human. In fact, one of the chapters I was recording with a book with a gentleman yesterday morning, we were talking about this keynoting. We were talking about the boomerang effect, the kind of interactivity with an audience. So I'm throwing something out there and something's coming back, feeling and data and emotions and people's posture, and people are laughing or not laughing and sitting up and attentive or not attentive. And you, as a speaker, you can dynamically work with them. It's a conversation, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
AI has not evolved to the point of being able to create a conversation, to create feelings, to create that kind of interaction on the fly. Our brain, of course, is far, far more sophisticated than any computer that's ever existed in the past. It might be surpassed in the future, but we have no estimation of what that looks like at this point. We're here already hitting the theoretical physical limits of computing power through density. So it's really interesting you mentioned that creative side. I'm 100% online with that. But the thing about change, this is a really interesting topic, change and fear and change and resistance. As a long-time entrepreneur, you ask almost any entrepreneur, they're not really, they have, you would say that they have a high resistance to the high tolerance for change. But the reality of it is they are exactly like everybody else. They have issues with change, and it's got to do with sudden, dramatic, externally forced change. And that's, people are not actually really afraid of change. People love change. People want change. Where do you go when it's vacation time? You look for a change. You want a change of scenery. You want something different. What are we going to eat tonight? Oh, we're going to eat the same thing we ate for the last 10 years straight? No, I want something different. Please give me something different, for Christ's sake. So change is great. We love change. We thrive on change and variety. But what it is, if we feel like we're forced into something, and the key element here is we don't understand. We don't know our place in a new order. We don't know what we're going to be doing. We feel it's unfamiliar territory. And there's certain personality types which are very much against a lot of personal change, like work change and things like that, because they might be really regimented people. They have lots of structure. They have a diary that's full, and those kind of people with very precise schedules, they probably just change the most. People like myself, I can't really comment. I've got like 3 appointments, this whole week, one of which is this appointment. Doesn't mean I'm not busy. I'm busy all the time, but I don't like structure. I try not to have structure in my life. I embrace creativity. I embrace chaos. And the trick around entrepreneurs facing change, or rather creating change, which is the real key here, they're in control of it. So they've got a vision, they've got something they want to do. And these are the types of people that are talking about, I'm talking about change. I'm talking about, I want to make something change. I want to force a change. That's me. I don't like the way things are, and I'm moving towards something rather than running away from something, which is kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And the way that entrepreneurs use this, it's a very common one of the thousands of techniques, but particularly for change, is this secular process. So I'll try something, and if it fails, it's fine, because it's like I try a little tiny thing, or ask a friend, what do you think about this? And they say, oh, that's the worst idea ever. And so I go, okay, that doesn't sound very good. I'll go and ask somebody else. I'll ask somebody else. I won't give up. I'll do lots and lots of, or I'll maybe say it in a different way, or I'll tweak it until I get the result that I want. And then I say, okay, that's great. That's the result I wanted. And then I'll get more positive reinforcement, and I'll get more action and more traction, as they call it, on my idea, and it'll eventually take life. And it can start this internal process of testing. It can start internally. It doesn't have to be external. It can be you evaluating yourself. Am I ready for it? Is this what I really want? Is this the direction I really want to go? And really, putting these hard questions to yourself to really work out if you're going to commit to a project or something, or if there's another alternative, or you can give it up. I'm starting an app because when I move over, this is the other day, I'm starting an app because I moved overseas, and I had all these leftover subscriptions that I'd forgotten, and I'm paying for subscriptions that I don't need anymore, and I'm moving to a new country, and I don't know what subscriptions to get over there. So I've created an app to be able to do that for people around the world. Okay, great. But you could equally just say, well, tough, it's just like I moved to another country. I forgot a couple of subscriptions, big deal. It cost me 50 quid. And yeah, I have to do a mucking around and I have to look for a new subscription on the other side. Does it really mean that you have to spend 20 years, 10 years of your life, 150,000 of your personal money, millions of investors' money to try and make a solution for everybody? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So that's where the kind of testing process comes in. Sometimes we can just give it up. Sometimes we can just say things are broken and they always will be broken. I can't fix it. Or you can take on, the steps and the challenges to make it work, to make it fixed, to get some resolution, to make a change, to make it slightly better, if that's the only thing we do.
Yeah, I've got a great story to share about change myself. Anyway, many years ago, when I was a young part qualified accountant in London, a company I was working in was going through a lot of change. And like yourself, Matt, I don't particularly like structure. I'd be, one of those very perceiving persons. I like to keep my options open. I don't like being pushed into making a decision here and now. And the person I was reporting into, he was a person who was very, very structured. And he, not alone did he do his own to-do list every week. He used to do a to-do list for the managing director himself and all his other fellow directors and myself and the financial accountant. He was one of those people who had to do a to-do list for everybody. And he loved structure. Then we were going through a period of change. He found it very hard to cope with that change. And he unloaded all his frustration about life and change on me. And me being the more creative personality who likes to keep their options open, doesn't like structure. He burnt me out then because all he was doing was offloading all his stress onto me, which then dimmed my creativity and effectively burnt me out. So it's amazing the way when you have change in the company, how different personalities can rub off each other, or the more stronger extroverted personality can actually overwhelm the more introverted type of personality. And at that stage, there was no talk of, having boundaries between yourself and another person. So I really struggled with change. Yeah.
I mean, corporate change. I mean, I've never been in corporate. I mean, I've worked as an independent advisor and consultant with large corporations, but I've always held back that, you pay me a lot of money, I'll tell you what I think, and if you like it, great. If you don't like it, you've paid me money. Thank you very much. See you later. So it sounds pretty brutal. The reality is they love it, right? They happily pay me the money. But that kind of sense of independence, the reality of it is, I don't want to be bossed around by anybody, and that's been my mantra as an individual all my life. I think it comes from being raised in the outback of Australia and being super, super independent out there. I left home when I was 14, for example, so super independent kind of person. But within corporate structure, changes happen. They happen inevitably, or they happen, by brute force because of external companies. Something's going bad, a big competitor, or because they need to transform. They need to keep up with the market. Most companies die because they don't embrace change. So the bigger companies should be embracing change as a matter of course. They should be constantly looking at evolution. Their problem as an organization, if they're facing massive issues with regards to change management and big changes happening, is because it's too sudden. People are not feeling empowered. People are not feeling informed. That's when the problems come. It really is all about that. And even though it sounds, I'm very not the personality you talked about, which is lots of to-do lists and things. I'm not that personality. We need all of these personalities. We need this diversity in companies. We need mavericks like me to tick everybody off and send the company spinning into a new direction as far as strategy or business innovation goes, or acquisitions. Equally, we need someone that's going to execute, dot all the I's, cross all the T's, drag me across the cogs for the detail of how exactly it's going to work. All of those are really important because one can't exist without the other. And there's a whole strata in between. So there's no good or bad approaches to change. There's just good or bad implementations of change, whether that's an external force or whether that's an internal driven need to change.
Yeah.
If it's internal, you should be, as an organization, should be embracing a culture of change. That's really imperative, because the world keeps changing. That's the one truth, is the world will keep evolving, and in business there'll always be competitors rising up. There is no business that I know of where there's no competition. I've never met a business yet, and I've been in business for many years, thousands and thousands of founders I've met, and most of them that I work with are the people that are rising up, that are challenging the incumbents and challenging them and taking away their market share and they do that by driving innovation and doing things differently and more efficiently, etc. Hence driving change in the marketplace, new choice for customers.
If you go back to the very first of the handheld mobile phones, you had Nokia, for example, you had Siemens, you had Motorola with their flip phone.
I remember the Siemens. They were tiny.
Yeah, they were dominant at the time. And then BlackBerry came along with their QWERTY keyboard, and they dominated, I suppose you could say, the corporate sector for maybe 5 or 6 years, because a lot of companies, they could get an enterprise server where they could set up the company email on the BlackBerry for employees, and they could dictate which apps you'd have on that phone, because they'd lock down that phone altogether on you. And they became the main phone for the corporate sector. And then Apple came along with the iPhone and completely usurped BlackBerry's market share, because their iPhones, even the iPhone 4 at the time, was much more user-friendly than the BlackBerry. And you also had the introduction of the App Store, which allowed people to download as many apps as they wanted to, from the Apple App Store. And what happened then with BlackBerry was their whole market share was gone. The iPhone completely usurped the BlackBerry, and BlackBerry then as a company looked around for a number of years to try and find alternative products to serve the market, and they just couldn't find a new niche for themselves. So they were a good example of a company that was usurped by external forces.
100%. Look, yeah. there's really only one thing that drives the human race, right? That drives the human race forward, and that's creativity, innovation, that kind of stuff. It's around change. That's what makes the world better. That's what makes life better. That's what makes me human better. The curiosity to make things better, and that drives technology, and it drives innovation. And innovation would be things like business model innovation. For example, Uber, which many people are familiar with. Yep. That's not a technology innovation. They use pretty standard technology. They're a tech company, but they didn't do anything revolutionary in technology. It's just, almost off the shelf, basic stuff they did. Their innovation was in the model, the way that they did things. That was the big change. And that created millions of jobs, generated billions of dollars, created massive amounts of angst and protests from people that resisted change because they didn't see it coming. Yeah. So I don't know if you remember cab drivers in various countries around the world, governments got involved because the change is so seismic and dramatic. And then you can point to the same type of, I'm upset about something's not going my way and I need change. Things like revolutions, the Arab Spring, governments changing from left wing to right wing in various countries. The current Italy changed recently from more towards central left to far right. So these are all people wanting to make change happen because they just are not happy with the way things are at the moment. So if you're going to talk about change, it's a positive force in the universe. It's a positive force that's going to drive innovation, that's going to drive change, and generally our way of life now is best in human history. We've got some of the biggest challenges in human history to face, but we also have the best lifestyle, longest longevity, lowest crime, rights, human rights. Everything is amazing compared to even 100 years ago, let alone 1,000 years ago. It was ridiculous. It's a skyrocket of positive change that we've been living through, and there's more to come. But you shouldn't be afraid of change. If you're afraid of something, the key to that is education. And AI, going back in a bit of a loop back to that, AI is a tool that we can use. It's a tool to serve us. It's never going to be Terminator. It's never going to be any of those things. But it might create a new world that we cannot currently conceive. I mean, you remember back when the little Siemens and the flip motor rollers came out. I could not have predicted that computing power would get so great and the world would change so much that today my children could talk to their cousins in the States and it would cost nothing, and I could find out where they are, and I could talk to them on their way home from school. I would never have been able to imagine that, never in a million years. So what the world we live in right now compared to when I was 20 something. We live in a completely new world. And what is it going to be like when technology is, I can't remember the law, the computing law, where it doubles every X number of years. How we've got 100-fold, 1,000,000-fold increase in technology, and people don't have a concept of how powerful and how quickly the human race are moving, because human beings are not very good at scale. Again, remember I said we're really good at pattern recognition and creativity, and we should stick to that genre, interacting with humans and creativity, and that is the most powerful place that human beings can exist. And I'll give you an example. You can easily imagine 1 or 1,000, and you can easily imagine 1,000,000, yeah? But can you imagine 1,000,000,000, and can you imagine 1,000,000,000,000? And in our heads we go, oh yeah, 1, 1,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000, 1,000,000,000. That's great. But we've put it in seconds. So 1 second is like, it's already gone. 1,000 seconds, well, that's what, 33 minutes or 33 minutes, something like that. And 1,000,000 is 33 hours, yeah. And then, or 333 days or something. And then you've got 1,000,000,000, which is 33,000. Sorry, it's 3,300 years, but 1,000,000,000,000 is 33,000 years. So we say it like it's really quick and easy and we can hop between them, but 33,000 years, it's like 10 times the length of written human history. Like, it's so far. But computers, yeah, no problem. You create a program, you make it do 1,000,000 tasks, you make it do 1,000,000,000 tasks, you make it do a 1,000,000,000,000 tasks. It can almost accomplish the same feat in the same amount of time. All it does is scale. It uses these flexible scaling networks that we hear about on Amazon and Azure and all these kind of S3 clouds. And it just takes up more computing space for a short period of time and then executes and then comes back down again. So if you ask it to do something 1 time, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, 1,000,000,000 times, or 1,000,000,000,000 times, it would just get done. Yep. Yeah. Whereas human beings, would you like to do the accounts once for me? Yes. Would you like to do them 1,000 times for me? Well, maybe. Would you like to do them 1,000,000,000 times for me?
Yeah.
Would you like to do them 1,000,000,000,000 times for me? Yeah. We quickly get out of our depth as far as capacity. So scale, which computers, technology, AI, these things provide, is incredibly powerful. As long as we understand who we are in the process of change and creating things and what we can use as a tool, we're going to be so much better at it.
Yeah, this has been a very good point there you're making, because I know what you're saying there. You just take, for example, going back many years ago, you had Windows 95. Compare that to Windows 11 that you have today. They're completely different. Windows 11 is far more powerful than Windows 95 was. And if you just think about, the computing power of the 90s compared to today's PCs and laptops. Today's PCs and laptops are far more powerful, and they can run macros far much quicker than, PCs at the mid-90s could, So, but also what you're saying there is, I think with AI and all this machine learning, what you're going to see is a lot of the drudgery work taken away from people. And one of the things that kind of turned me off working in the corporate sector any longer than I wanted to work there was the fact that a lot of jobs in the corporate sector, they're very kind of prescriptive. Your job is to do A, B, C, and D. And that's what you do. You don't do E, F, and G. So people become like, you go in on a Monday, you process information, or you process detail all week long, and you give the output of that to somebody else up the line from you to interpret that information. And then pass it on to somebody else further up up the line again, of course, so you're just really a data cruncher, I suppose you could say, or a number cruncher. Yeah.
Look, business is evolving, workplaces are evolving. And what was true, 10, 20 years ago is still true for some corporations that are living or operating in that business model, in that model in the past. That's why new startups, that's why people do things differently. Today, you can use free apps, what they call no-code programming, so grouping and plugging apps together, and maybe a bit of code in the middle, what they call low code, to create brand new solutions from existing pieces of solutions. And you can do that in like days or weeks, whereas the same level of sophistication would have taken a corporation 10 years ago 5 years to do, and 1,000 programmers, because they created everything from scratch and they were systemizing everything from scratch, and they had to they had to draw out the whole schematic. We want an email program, great, so that's going to take a year, and we want this kind of authentication login, so we do this. We don't think that way anymore. We just don't. We think about what can we take that's done that we can replicate. This idea of scale and replication is so synonymous with modern business today, and it's freed up many people from what was traditional roles of let's do some data processing here and let's move it across there. Those roles are going, and if you're in that kind of role, you should watch out, because anything that can be systemized really should be systemized, because it's more effective, it saves money, it saves time, it produces better results for shareholders, better results for employees, more satisfaction, and better results for consumers on the other end. This is an obligation of business to streamline and make things effective. That's business management 101. That's what you're meant to do, to optimize the system to make it better. And if they're working in outdated modality, that's an issue. I could even go on to talk about education, which is, we're still educating people in an industrial age method and methodology, and we're producing industrial age workers. We're producing people in schools, predominantly, probably a major portion of them, to go into retail, corporate jobs, which is fine because they represent a good proportion of jobs. But tell you what, the time that we were freest and we were most independent and we were most and our quality of life was highest was actually like in not medieval days, but in the Renaissance era, where most people were self-employed. Predominantly almost everybody was self-employed. They were artisans, they were tradesmen, they were independents, they had their own thing going on, they set their own hours, they did their own stuff. And that was the most freedom and the most profits and the most value. Now imagine going back into that more and you see it in the world of, freelancing has exploded over the last 5-10 years. And the great resignation that happened from COVID, everybody leaving corporate jobs and wanting to start their own independent businesses or work part-time or work from home, we're right in the center of a seismic change in the way people work or look at work or look for fulfillment or look for what they want to do in life or what they want to accomplish in life. It really is, when you talk about change, we're in a state of massive change right now. Whether you're in as an individual in a state of change or not is neither here nor there. We are as a time in a state of change. There's a lot of threat. There's a lot of opportunity. And, people look at things like, COVID's been terrible. Well, equally, I could, from an entrepreneurial point of view, say that there's thousands of businesses that have risen from nothing, made enormous profits, hired lots of people, and create incredible things, incredible products from COVID. Whenever there's something bad, entrepreneurs naturally look for the silver lining, naturally look for solutions to that problem. And as soon as they start coming up with solutions, if they're good ones, the bigger the catastrophe, whether it be, house prices are too high. You've got a company like Redfin in America, which is like a multi-billion-dollar company dealing with house prices are too high for young people to buy houses. Boom, Redfin's exploding. Do you know what I mean? Whenever there's a massive crisis, whenever there's a massive problem, entrepreneurs are the people that fix it. And that comes back to that creativity piece. And then that tool of understanding change and driving change. I don't want to be subject to change. I like to drive change. I think that's if people get in the driving seat behind it, I think they're much more powerful.
Yeah, I know what you're saying there. And one of the great benefits of Chat GPT is that, for example, where you have companies who want to upgrade software by utilizing Chat GPT, the actual time frame for developing the upgraded software source has come down from maybe months to days. So there's
Yeah,
a
there's actually a lot of products.
applications within the
You
organization.
know, the AI the AI mentioning is just one of many. It's just
Yeah,
hit a lot of standards at the moment, but there's a lot of more integrated AI. So they're integrated into standard coding apps.
yeah,
So the apps that programmers already use to create and structure their code, it will check for them and it will make suggestions. And they start typing something, it'll like, how we finish sentences on
yeah.
on WhatsApp, or
Outlook.
on a Facebook or something. It'll finish a
Yeah,
sentence for you in an
yeah.
email, or it'll ask you, it'll autocorrect and it'll make suggestions on grammar. They'll make syntax changes. So Grammarly, which I think a lot of people use as an app, that's a syntax change basically.
Yeah.
And one is using grammar, the other one using code. That's the only difference. So you just train an AI differently.
True.
Look, AI is really prevalent already and is already making a massive impact. I think it's something that, again, people are afraid of it. Education is the key. And remember, maybe working a little bit more about what could I use the latest technology for to drive change for me, instead of being a victim of change. And I really like the concept, if people are afraid of change, to start to use it, empower yourself to get involved. Entrepreneurs can't help themselves. They can't help but want to get involved with stuff because they love being in the driving seat. They know what it's like. And it might not be you that does all the work. It could be you working with someone
True.
who's more tech literate, or on a particular path. So it doesn't have to be you leading it. Every leader needs people underneath them. There's always a CEO in a company. Some companies are just the CEO. They're fooling themselves. They need more people. Entrepreneurism, change, growth, anything. It's a team game. So even if it's a solo entrepreneur that you might meet one day, or you might know, they should have advisors. They should have investors. They should have people that are their competitors that they're learning from, or people that are in similar industries or networking groups. There's people around them that there should be. If there's not, they might be one of the 95% that die within the first, a year between idea and a profitable business. So, that's my tip after 11 corporations and thousands of startups. Get yourself lots of people around you.
Yeah, of course, agree. This has been an amazing conversation today about change, Matt. So my three takeaways from today's conversation are, first of all, I agree with you in terms of education. I think there's far too much emphasis on academia in education and getting into university. And what we need really is more people to be taught to think creatively, because the jobs of the future are going to require that creative thinking. Also, the second point I could make here is that companies can be usurped either from external forces or within, because change is required badly to survive. And I think people need to be able to anticipate change much more going into the future, and not to be afraid or fear change. They have to take change and run with it. And thirdly, I would say that AI is going to impact many jobs into the future. And we just took the analogy there earlier on in the conversation about, say, the first generation smartphones compared to what we have today with the iPhone and Google phone, for example. So I can see AI progressively having much more impact on people's working lives going to the future. And we have to be able to adapt to that change and embrace it. That's the most important
100%.
Yeah.
And I just want to add one little thing on education. I'm absolutely not. I'm not upset about the education system. All it is they haven't. It's a big system, and when every big system exists, it takes a long time for this system to evolve. The problem that we have, especially in the Western world, is that we've got, as adults, we've been raised in more of a 60s, 70s kind of life by parents in that age group. And what we've got is we've got similar leftover legacy thinking of we have to be working all day, we have to be productive, we have to do this, and the kids go off to school and the dad goes off to work. This kind of mentality that is changing right now. But as a parent myself, I mean, I've already got the idea for my next book, which is called Raising Superheroes, which is about what we do to grow children. So I'm not expecting the education system to catch up with my entrepreneurial thinking, innovation, understanding education about AI. And I'm not expecting them at all to catch up for another 10 years. So I'm not going to waste my children's opportunity by waiting for them. I'm going to take it in control of what's going on in the world right now, what change is happening, and I'm going to introduce concepts and challenge my children to think bigger and think better. Little things like, you know, I come from the outback of Australia, so I take them out in the bush, I take them out camping, I expose them to nature. I think it's really important to have that relationship with nature, especially urban kids don't get enough of that. I expose them to AI and I get them to understand where its place is. I challenge them to creativity. I really demand creativity. They have to, for example, come up with an idea of how they're going to spend their pocket money and pitch to me at the end of the week what that idea is, and then I'll give them the pocket money if they have a good pitch, a good idea. So this is the kind of things that I can do as a parent to push my children to be the best that they can be in a fast evolving world. I don't think that the onus is on somebody else to make my life work or make my children's life work. The idea of change, that I'm in control of change, that I educate myself and I take control and I push change for me and for my purposes. And if that doesn't work, well, I'm still changing. I'm just moving in a different direction, to a new job, to a new whatever. So I'm in the wheelhouse. I'm the captain of my own life.
Yeah.
I think that is the important message here. Whether it be change for my children and education for the future, whether it be change from a corporation, whether it be something I don't like about the environment or the way the government's working or anything, everybody has the ability to make an impact.
Of course. And I think what you're saying there is everybody's got to take responsibility for their own life and take ownership of the change they need to make in their own life. So on that note, I'll bring today's conversation to a close. Thank you very much, Matt.
No, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.